Welcome to the Lovecraft eZine podcast. Today is August the 27th, 2017. Our guest today is Nick Gucker, who is not here. He had to restart his computer, according to Kelly, which is fine. We've got plenty to talk about. Matt, why don't you talk about your prize, and then let's do introductions while we're waiting on Nick.
Okay, sorry this is dark. Okay, but this is
we can see it.
This is a collection of horror stories by a venerated author, Sax Rohmer. There's like 15 stories in here, including Brood of the Witch Queen. You could think of them as weird tales or terror tales, and it's a beautiful edition from Centipede Press.
Centipede Press does awesome work.
Oh, that looks cool too.
All right, good. And for the love of God, guys, don't let me forget before we end the show to tell everybody how they can win the prize. I've forgotten the last two shows.
How can they win?
How can they win the prize? I'll tell you later. All right, let's do introductions. Let's start with Kelly and work our way over.
Hi, I'm Kelly Young. I am the executive editor of Strange Eons magazine.
Pete.
I am Pete Rawlick, and I am an author and editor.
Yes, you are. Yes, you are. Philip.
Philip Fracassi, author and screenwriter.
Rick.
Rick Lay, writer, who is showing his affinity for The Empire Strikes Back by nearly losing a hand like Luke Skywalker at Necronomicon.
And I was there. I saw it happen. I couldn't prevent it. I was not fast enough. SP.
I'm losing my voice. I'm SP Miskowski, and I write fiction.
And Matt.
I'm Matt Carpenter. I'm one of Kelly Young's many critics.
Ouch. Not sure you had that many, but all right.
Painful but accurate. All right, I'm Mike Davis. Let's, I think Nick's having a little bit of trouble, so let's talk about Necronomicon. Do you guys want me to go first, or does anybody want to talk about their highlights from Necronomicon?
You can go.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
You can go.
I can go? All right. Well, I was given a lot of stuff by people. And I'm going to have Rick talk about this, but what I'm holding up right now, for those who are listening only later, is Eldritch Tarot Cards by Sarah Bardi, B-A-R-D-I. They're really nice. Rick looked them over in the hotel room. We shared a hotel room at Necronomicon. So I'm going to let Rick talk about them for a moment.
I would have this was Saturday night that I saw them, so I had to leave early Sunday. Otherwise, I would have tried to see if Sarah returned to the dealer room to buy a copy. Now, looking them up online, they're available for pre-order, coming out, I think, in February 2018. And they're a steal at a price of, it's in euros, but it comes up to something like $15, but with postage, it ends up being about $30. But they are worth it. They rather cleverly blend in things from Lovecraft and the mythos, like the Emperor is the King in Yellow, the High Priest is Cthulhu. Nyarlathotep is a few things. He's death. It is Pharaoh incarnation, and it is sort of con man incarnation from the prose poem Nyarlathotep. He's the magician. So you get that sort of Nikola Tesla scientific equipment. And I think the Empress looks like a female version of the King in Yellow. Maybe it's supposed to be Casilda. I really had a lot of fun. There's one of the Horner in the Dark. I believe it's the Tower. So you see the Horner in the Dark next to the church spire. I just thought they were excellent.
And how did you find them online? Did you just Google Sarah Bardi's
I did
website?
Sarah Bardi, Eldritch Tarot.
Okay.
Right. I think Sarah did the artwork for Mythos Grimly.
A Mythos Grimly?
Yeah, let me check.
Okay. Well, when I was talking to Sarah Barty, Jeff Thomas and I were talking to her, and she went on and on and on, not about her stuff, but about the game Bloodborne and how Lovecraftian it is. Of course, you have to have a PlayStation 4 in order to play the game, but you can go to YouTube and watch Bloodborne walkthroughs. And from what the way she's talking about Bloodborne, it's the most Lovecraftian game ever, and really well done. So
It's impossible. It's such a hard game.
I've heard that. Have you played it?
Yeah. There's another game that uses the same engine. I can't remember it. But basically the way Bloodborne and this other game play is that you have to fight your way through X amount of stuff. And if you don't get all the way through, you have to start all over again. And it's not like a short level. It's like you can play for an hour and lose at the very end. You have to do the whole thing over again. And it takes all your stuff. And after 4 or 5 tries, I just gave up because it was too frustrating. And the other game that they have with the same engine is the same way. And I talked to my local resident game expert, my 16-year-old, who said that they're some of the harder games to play, even for gamers. But it was cool looking. I wanted to play it more. But.
Is it anything like Tempest, which is probably the last video game I ever played?
Is that the one where you go around and you shoot spiders in this weird blue spiderweb thing? Tunnel?
Yeah, it is. How old are you? Jeez.
I was about to say, you're showing your age there, buddy.
I'm old. Well, my favorite game was Joust with the ostriches.
Yeah.
Knock the other guy off the ostrich.
Back on Joust again. Mike, this is your video game podcast again.
Yeah, and I'm definitely not the expert. Okay, so I'm getting questions about Rick's hand. He and I shared a hotel room. The short version is he can add to this if he wants to, but it was one of those quirky things. He tripped over the bedspread on the floor, and I couldn't get to him in time. And you can take it from there, Rick.
It fell on my hand, and
yeah,
I thought I just had a sprain. I had to rush to the Robert E. Howard discussion panel, and as I was gradually over the day, it swelled up below the knuckle. And I went to I later did a King in Yellow panel, which went very well. And stayed for the Sunday morning breakfast, got home, went to the doctor first thing Monday. They x-rayed the hand and they had 2 broken bones below the knuckle.
Yeah, you were a trooper to keep soldiering on with that going on.
Was it the Crom's bones that you broke?
I don't know exactly what the technical name, but it's these bones right here.
Never mind, that was my Robert E. Howard joke. So.
Oh, the
Crom's bones.
Chrome bones.
Yeah, and let me just kill this rumor in the bud too that Kelly's trying to start. Rick did not punch anybody out at Necronomicon.
Son of a bitch.
So that's not true. No matter how much anyone may have deserved it, he did not punch anybody out.
Oh, well.
By the way,
I wasn't near anybody controversial.
I heard that he was saying that he didn't, but he actually did. So
That's what a real hero would do. So.
I never wanted to say this before, but Rick is a very violent person. So
I can attest to that.
How's that?
Well,
Took a dark
He's going to reveal the secret that when I was under medication, I woke up in the middle of the night, sounding like a Robert E. Howard hero. I was having
Do we want to tell this story on air?
I was having a dream where I was
That's all right.
actually fighting the children of the night. So you can imagine what I was saying.
We don't have
I
to
know what
imagine
you
what
said.
you were saying.
He woke up in the middle of the night, like 4 o'clock in the morning. He's like, I don't give a shit. I'll kill you all.
Oh. That's a little terrifying.
And then he went back to sleep.
Especially if you know Rick, the quietest, nicest guy on the panel.
Were his thews rippling when he yelled that?
The 7 other people in the room kind of all migrated to the same corner.
There were
Please
only 7. We only had 2 other roommates.
Please don't make me angry. You wouldn't like me when I'm angry.
Dun, dun,
And
dun,
I don't think I think you want to tell them that. So I don't think either of them heard it.
Yeah, I think I was the only one who was up and awake to see this.
Okay, so yeah, I don't know how we got on all that, but
I was wrong. It was not Sarah Barty who did the artwork for A Mythos Gremlin.
Okay.
So.
All right. Rick, you want to briefly talk about the King in Yellow panel since we were missing a key person there?
Actually, it was a
There's Nick. We'll get to you in a minute. Hey, Nick.
Hello.
Hey. Well, okay, let's go then. Since we got Nick finally, let's go to the King in Yellow panel after we talk to Nick. Is that all right?
That's fine.
All right.
My
Now,
apologies.
unfortunately for Nick, Kelly Young will be leading most of the interview. So,
Oh, Lord.
if anyone has questions for Nick, please feel free to interrupt Kelly in mid-sentence.
Yeah, please. I don't really know what I'm going to do with this because I don't know Nick at all. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've never hung out.
Well, I got to throw you in the deep end of the pool sometime. So, see if you think or swim. You'll probably sink, but you never know.
Hey, Nick, just for everybody watching along at home, and because it's a tradition here, you got to kind of explain what's going on in the background behind you.
But behind me?
Yes.
Or
Oh.
behind me. Behind me is fine, too.
Yeah, or anybody. Just pick a person to talk about.
Oh, there's a variety of things. We've got some creatures from the Black Lagoon. We've got the Biolante figure version, whatever. I'm not super techie on my toy stuff, but Pop Bot from Ashley Wood.
They're not toys; they're action figures.
No, those are actually toys.
No.
I take them out of the box, I tell you. A variety of stuff. We got my little Cthulhu thingy here. It's black. Anything else you want to?
There's Hedora. There's a white Hedora.
Oh, yes, that's actually glows in the dark. Got that.
Shit, that's so fucking cool.
Pretty awesome. Yeah, it's pretty big. It's I picked that up in Thailand. Thailand's a good place for toying.
Yeah, you actually travel a lot and hit a lot of different countries and pick up various toys and stuff like that. Because I know a lot of those vinyl, especially the Godzilla ones, those are tough to find over here.
They are, and it depends on what some conventions have some really good dealers that show up with some really interesting things. But Hong Kong has been really good for finding toys. They've got like these malls where you go in. And each floor is dedicated, like one's dedicated to just phone stuff, like phone covers, headphones, like it's an entire floor of a mall. And then another floor is, dedicated to like TVs. And then there's one that's just all these little tiny stalls that are just all toys. And it's kind of amazing.
Why don't you tell everybody about the time you had tea with the King of China?
I think you had... I think you mean when I saw the King of Thailand come out in his motorcade from the hospital where he was staying. Is that what you're referring to?
Whatever.
On his birthday?
That's right. That's right. Well, Nick, let's start a little bit with getting a background on the journey, because I know you were born in Alaska, and then when did the art bug hit you, and did that happen prior to discovering your love for horror or concurrent with?
Definitely before the love of horror. I mean, we grew up Catholic, so there's always a level of horror that's prevalent amongst all of that. I mean, every year when you go through like the Passion of the Cross, it's a pretty brutal execution of imagery when you start to read about the different phases, and that gets ingrained in you pretty early on. And also growing up with a lot of hunting and fishing and things like that, you learn to clean your own kill. So that can be gruesome. And yeah, but we always had interesting children's books around. Mom was always telling us really interesting stories. Learned very early on about the story of Baba Yaga. And so that was always one of those things that was kind of always haunting you when you go venturing into the woods. You wonder if you'll come across this witch in a butter churn that wants to eat your bones and bake you in the oven. So there's always these levels of things that were always kind of dark in the background that were always there. And I did start drawing early as well because I had older brothers and sisters. And an older brother of mine, Eric, who he did a lot of artwork at the time, kind of influenced me to want to pursue that as well. And he also had a good buddy of his that was into Dungeons and Dragons and stuff like that. And he would come over and talk about D&D, like, because I was just fascinated. And while he talked about it, he'd have a chunk of clay with him, like a modeling clay, and he'd model whatever thing that was prevalent, maybe some creature that he fought, or just some crazy thing he made up. And they were always really stylish and cool things, and he'd plop it down in front of me and then take off. And I was always like, rad, I want to create stuff. So
you guys were encouraged to draw stuff during the holidays and everything too, right?
Yeah, most certainly. Yeah, definitely. It was always like, making decorations. And the holidays were just a huge thing because we've got a big family, and it was always a lot of celebrating and a lot of steps leading up to whatever festivities were going on. And I always found myself definitely more interested in the Halloween stuff, and that stuff would be coming up. I was always super excited. And we used to have, I don't know what you call them. They would be flat, but you could open it up and you could reattach it. It was like this almost corrugated, or it would become a three-dimensional thing. We had this giant spider, I believe in Czechoslovakian we called it brok. I was brought up speaking Czech from probably till the age of 4.
What?
And then started speaking English after that, because babysitters and all that.
Things you learn. Hey, can I interject just real quickly, because I know that while people are listening to you talk and Kelly interview you, they want to take a look at your art. So can they find all of your art or most of it at your websites and www.nickthehat.com?
Yeah, nickthehat.com. It's my blog website. I need to do a proper site, but you can also find like prints of my work on Etsy under Nick Gucker or Nick the Hat. And I've got a threadless t-shirt shop as well where you can see some other designs that I've done. But yeah, definitely. Yep, on my website you can peruse a number of my images.
I linked it to the web page already, Mike.
All right, thank you. All right.
Well, so this is all new to me. I didn't know, in all the years I've known you, this is the first I've heard of growing up speaking Czech until you were 4.
Yeah. There was that was something I didn't even realize until later in life when my mom would be telling stories, and I was like, oh yeah, I knew all these different words, and we'd call things different things, and it just didn't really faze me that was unusual and that I was doing double language action. But I really haven't kept up by any means on any of it. Like when I'm around my mom or she's around her family, I'm completely lost. Like they're just going a mile a minute and laughing, and I'm just like picking up a few words here and there, and I'm just like, yeah. But yeah, so yeah, Halloween decorations were always fun to pull out, and always like, during the holidays you don't have articulated skeletons except in Halloween, like and giant flaming skulls and cats sitting on pumpkins, and that really pushed me to, and there's a lot more interesting things for me. I mean, carving pumpkins was always fun. Having an opportunity to execute some kind of three-dimensional art. Sure, yeah, good times. And plus there's always the storytelling, so many different stories, and we always had a lot of records that we'd listen to, story records, and we had a pretty nice collection of Halloween story records, and always enjoyed popping those out because it was, other stories were fun to listen to, but it was always the Halloween ones. You just have a much more visceral response. You're just much more excited. The anticipation of the punchline, if you will, the whole thing is a lot of fun, and it just a lot of fantastic imagery that you just whip up in your mind when you're listening to these weird stories. So,
yeah, I just started collecting vinyl again because I bought myself an old record player, and I've been searching out those kind of things, the old stories on record, and the old. You remember when we were kids, at least, you could buy the Spider-Man story that came with the comic book and a 45 record, and it would tell the story.
Yeah, I've got the Spider-Man versus Werewolf by Night, or no, that's not Werewolf by Night. It was the one Moonwolf. Yeah, he had a chunk of moon in like a necklace, and he would turn into a werewolf. Yeah,
and he was J. Jonah Jameson's son.
Yeah.
Yes, I still have that, I believe.
Yeah, that kind of stuff is fun. You don't see anything like that anymore.
Well, it should come back.
So,
records with comics.
So at this point now, art is becoming part of your life and everything. You're going through school, and I know that there's a million things going on for you up there. You're in and out of bands, and music is a big deal to you and all that. But when do you realize early on that you want to be an artist for a living?
Well, my first attempt was when I left Alaska to go to school. I went to the Art Institute in Seattle and did my 2-year due diligence of schooling there. And coming out of school, my portfolio was not what I wanted it to be. It was very much like commercial art, and I had this duality going where it was like I was trying to fulfill a curriculum on one side, and on the other side, I had all this art that I wanted to do on my own. And there was a teacher at the time who decided he would have an after-school class. His name was Dev Madan, and he used to work on video games a lot. He worked on like Sly Cooper, is that what it's called? Like the sneaky fox or something.
Not familiar with this one.
Sorry. It's been a while.
It sounds made up.
His history, but he basically was like showing us all these different techniques you can do to like do panels, break away from just straight grid work on comics, like make borders interesting, overlap stuff, break frames, and was just kind of getting our juices flowing on the idea of like, this is like comics 101. And then he had a brush pen and he was handing it around and giving everyone a go at it. And I was like, oh, this makes lines a lot more interesting. And so I promptly picked one up, and we had a project that the idea was to build a page and tell a quick narrative in one page with, however many panels, but you had to have kind of like this beginning and end, some kind of call and response going on for a single page. And that was hugely revelatory for me in terms of executing line work and ink and playing with narrative dynamics and action. It kind of blew my mind, because I was like, oh, all of a sudden Kirby's artwork made way more sense to me. Like I was looking at it for years and years growing up and going, why are his lines so different than other people? And then all of a sudden I'm like, oh, he really uses the brush to like every aspect. He uses the side of the brush, the tip of the brush, he is like a brush maniac. And I kind of keyed into that pretty quickly, playing with the brush, and I've just been going crazy with it ever since.
So you moved down here, and I know that you bopped around a little bit. You didn't just stay in Seattle, right?
No, correct. Yeah, at one point I was living in Salem, Oregon for about a year. I'd been doing a lot of music at the time and some touring, not really to any degrees of success, a lot of gas money and playing shows with like other peers and other great bands and stuff, but it was not like, paying the rent by any means. It was just fun. And so who doesn't want to have a rock and roll lifestyle? It was a ton of fun. So, and I just wanted to get away from, I guess what I'd consider band husbandry, where you're like, you have practices every week, you have certain responsibilities. There's a lot involved with it when you are attempting to, tour every 3 to 4 months, like down the West Coast, or do things like that where you don't even have a record out and you're still trying to get a name for yourself. So it's just kind of staying present. And so at one point, years and years and years later, I'd been doing art here and there, and I was, buying publishing books that would come out and list all genres of publishers. And I actually found a bunch of 5x7 cards, because I'd make notes, and then I'd create like brochures and things like that I would send out. I actually have one right here. And I know I'm not supposed to do like visuals, because there's a lot of people that do listen to this as a podcast, but I'd make brochures like this where I had some of my artwork, and I would go to my old paperback books and because I was collecting horror and sci-fi paperback books, and I'd take my images and put quotes from different book blurbs, and then I'd mail it off to different publishers and trying to get responses. And I remember, and I was looking at the 5x7 cards, and after of different publishers, and I was hitting up a lot of science places too, because I've got a big love for science and biology, and I would always love to do any art related to that kind of a field. But there weren't a huge amount of genre things. There's a lot of science fiction, not a whole lot of horror. There were like surrealist publications and some poetry things and stuff like that. And so, but I was just kind of spamming them with as much of my kind of pieces of weird art stuff that I would send them, and very little would get very little response. And after a couple of years, I was just fed up with kind of that route of trying to get into the publishing world, because it was like maybe you get 1 or 2 responses back in a year. Most of the time, nobody would respond, and you were blowing a lot of money on postage, and then follow up, and then all the things if you're trying to be diligent about it. So I kind of just stopped trying to hit the major publishing thing, and through doing music, I ended up doing a lot of flyers and a lot of the bands I was in, doing the art for the bands and things like that. So but it wasn't like it was making me money. So in 2008, between 2008 and 2009, I decided to just chill out on the whole band thing and refocus myself on my art, because I was like, well, trying to rally 4 to 5 people into making money versus just relying on myself to, and I'm not saying I was trying to make money with the band, but it's like it's tough. So especially with the kind of music we were playing. So yeah, I just turned around and I got involved with a local horror convention called Crypticon. And that kind of springboarded me into then producing art for the convention, and then meeting other people in the horror genre, meeting you at the HP Lovecraft Film Festival. I think that was probably around 2007, I want to say.
Yeah,
Kind of
that
a
sounds
step
about
backward, wasn't it?
Ouch, how dare you?
Yeah, and you guys were like, yeah, I publish a Lovecraft magazine and blah, blah, blah. And then we started talking, and soon after that, I think the first piece I did for you was for a Joel Pulver story. And
That's right, yeah.
That was super exciting. And then, yeah, getting involved with the horror convention, and I still do artwork for that local convention. And they're the ones who, the owner of that convention, Troy, was the one that pushed me to start vending and doing, tabling at conventions, because he was like, you got to stop running around and trying to help out. You should be sitting behind a table and selling your art. And I was like, I don't have any art. It's like, well, go make prints and get it done. I was like, oh, okay. It's like, guess that's what I have to do. And
so that's kind of what you do now too, right? You do a convention tour basically.
I try to. I mean, there's a variety of conventions. There, like the Lovecraft Film Festival's great. It's more of a film festival, but people are. It's a big fan festival as well. I do some horror conventions. Monster Palooza is a lot of fun. There's a lot of interesting celebrities and makeup and special effects people that you see there, and that's always a ton of fun. And so many creative people there on all levels: makeup, sculptural, 2D. Everything. It's a real celebration of just bizarre, weird horror art. And I do some comic conventions as well. And those can be real hit or miss, just because of everyone wants, Deadpool and fan art. So that's not really kind of my jam. So, it can definitely be
interesting that you say that, because some of the favorite pieces that I have of yours are the Marvel heroes that you have done in a Nick Gucker style.
But those are just things I've done for you. So
that's true. I know. I'm saying, other people out there who come across you at a con, it's something worth talking about.
Indeedly do.
Do you have a favorite con that you go to?
It's hard to say if I have a favorite con, because there's so many different combinations of things that I enjoy about them. Like Monster Palooza is fun. I do that with 2 of my other friends, Lance Thingmaker and Max Reinhardt of Creepy Cult and Skull Clown. And, I certainly don't make as much because there's 3 of us dividing a booth, financially, but I have like way more fun just because we're just goofing off the whole time, and we really get along well. Whereas like the Lovecraft Film Festival, I know so many people there. Necronomicon, I know a ton of people there. And it's just so much fun to see everybody and hang out and talk and then Crypticon, I've been doing that one a long time.
Although you did avoid me at Necronomicon.
I absolutely did. Every time I saw you, I made sure to like go the other way because I was just like, oh God.
Somebody
guy.
asked me, is Nick Gucker here? And I was like, I don't think so. I haven't seen him.
No, that was the crazy thing. Necronomicon was just insane as far as like how many people like after doing it for like since 2013 and 2015, you go there and you're like, I kind of know a lot of people. Holy smokes. And it was hard to get a lot of, you know, face time you wanted. Like I'd seen you a couple of times passing through the convention hall and I was like, oh, I need to go find like where he's at and say hello and like thank you for like, you know, doing a shout out for me recently on you know, the social medias, and I'm very grateful to you for that. Thank you.
Oh, not a problem.
Well, you guys were in the same room.
We
you were just at opposite ends.
Opposite corners.
But it was
you were in that big room?
yeah.
So
Okay,
I would,
you know,
I would
the thing
literally
is-
walk from the eZine table over to Nick's table and then back.
The thing is, though, and Pete will attest to this, I was rarely at the table. You know, having the table sort of an afterthought. I was there for the convention. I'm not a serious vendor like Nick is.
Yeah.
You know, so, like if we can sell a few books, that's fine. I have the Pete Rawlik philosophy on it.
I was lucky that Nick and I got to hang out a little bit at the Steely's after party. That was fun.
Yeah. No, it was great. Great to see you.
Well, Nick, you have worked with just about everybody on this panel except for maybe Rick and Matt personally. I mean, you've done, I know you did a cover of a Pete Rawlik book for the Lovecraft Film Festival, and of course you've done some stuff for Mike with eZine. You did the Dim Shores book with SP.
Yep.
You want to talk about any of these projects a little bit? Phillips, of course, you illustrated Phillips' story for Strange Eons.
Yep. Where should we begin? I mean,
I don't know. We could start with the bigwig, I guess, Mike Davis.
Well, yeah, actually, Lovecraft eZine has been a huge launching pad for myself as well. Just having contributed artwork and working with a variety of authors over the last number of years, and
you practically demanded to do the artwork for the Sea of Ash, and I love the way you did it too, because you were like, Mike, I just love this story. I've got to do the cover for it. You know, when you found out I was going to publish it.
Well, you were definitely championing that story quite a bit, and I hadn't read any of Scott Thomas's work. I'd read Jeffrey, but not Scott, and I was like, wow, it's amazing. These two brothers are both excellent writers and have very unique voices. And that particular story, Sea of Ash, was really striking. It's haunting. It's got so many interesting ideas going throughout it that you're like, man, he could just kind of springboard into a bunch of different other novellas based on some of these ideas he's just throwing out there and then moving on. It was super visual. I loved the weird layering of the whole story. Yeah, and Scott's writing is it's very poetic. And you can definitely get his love of where he lives, like the East, New England that he lives.
Yeah.
You definitely it seems like a lot of his love for New England comes through very strongly in his writing when he sets a scene and gives you the environment. It's quite prevalent. So it's just fun to get those different tastes and angles from different writers when they infuse their stories with things that they have delight. Working on that cover was certainly a big honor, and it was a lot of fun to do because it was tough because it's like, where do you start? Like, there's so many different things you could focus on, but I definitely wanted to focus on the main character, and I loved the weird, what do you call it, like a homunculus or whatever, the kind of the creature that would kind of reform in different ways depending on.
Oh yeah, Harry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed that aspect of it too, and the fact that it was kind of it took on different forms depending on what was available. It's just a very rich story and very fun to work with. And an opportunity for me to play with some watercolor on that cover. I tend to go into, when I start doing covers, and one of the things I wanted to do with this one, with Scott's story, I really, and you can only do so much stuff. I really wanted to focus on the hands because they had like the trilobite pattern in the fingernails. and that weirded me out. I thought that was such a great imagery thing, and it quite creepy. Like you imagine if somebody like, you know, shook your hand or put their hand down somewhere on a counter or whatever, and you noticed their fingernails were ancient creatures. Like I was just
It's like where does Scott get this stuff? It's Fractured Harry. I couldn't think of his name for a second. But Fractured Harry is who you were talking about a moment ago.
Thank you. Yes. Yeah, that's what a fun character. Yeah. And so
and you're gonna do Scott's working on the sequel soon, and you're gonna do the cover art for the sequel. So we already talked about it.
Indeed, yeah. And I ran into Scott at Necronomicon, and it was great to see him and his wife. And we briefly spoke on his upcoming book, and he said he's either working on it or to be working on it. I don't know what the status is of it, but he's excited about it. So, of
the sequel, you mean?
Correct.
Yeah, he's about to start on it. He had to finish up another story for someone else. So,
excellent.
But yes, it's definitely coming. So, yeah, and then there's this one, Endless Fall, by his brother Jeff Thomas.
Yep, absolutely.
I did nothing to make this happen. Absolutely nothing. You know, and you can tell this story, but Jeff basically said to me, "Hey, Nick did this art that I would love to have for the cover," and I was like, "Sure." That was the extent of my hard work on it. You know, so you want to talk about that?
Well, the artwork I had done back in 2012 for a film festival, a local Seattle film festival called Maelstrom's Fantastic. No, wait, is it? Kelly, what's it called? Maelstrom International Fantastic Film Festival?
Maelstrom International Fantastic Film Festival.
Yeah, it's got 3 Fs, not MILF.
That's
right. And it was a science fiction horror fantasy film festival, and it only ran for 2 years or something. And on the second year, I did that was the poster I did was that image, because I wanted to convey something that didn't have a film strip, and I wanted to have it look more like convey kind of a combination of those ideas, but in a way that was much more, I don't know, the idea that it was like this cool rock show, psychedelic kind of thing. And I really wanted it to get some attention to the film festival, but not in a way that was typical, because I felt like it might speak out to people that were more into those genre of film. I don't know if that worked necessarily. Again, you know, the festival only ran a couple years, but anyway, it's been a very popular image for me. People bring it up a lot, and apparently Jeffrey Thomas said he was inspired by that image to write the story The Endless Fall, and because of that, which I'm kind of freaked out and like over the hill about, or over the moon, not the hill, moon. Just super psyched. I thought I was super honored. I was like, oh my God, my image inspired you to write a story. It's kind of a huge honor. So when he reached out and asked if we could use that image for the cover, I couldn't say no. I mean, I was super psyched. I was like, yes, I would love for that to see the cover.
Well, and for those who cannot see it, who are listening on the podcast, which many do later, it's an astronaut, basically in an endless fall. There's other stuff you can describe it better than I can, Nick. But
the title of the piece is called "The Phantasmonaut Caught in the Tentacles of a Cosmic Paradigm," and
one of those short titles, right?
The inspiration came from there was a cosmonaut for Jeffrey Thomas's cover. We took away the CCCP insignia on the helmet, but the original, when I was designing this, I was looking at different astronaut outfits and spacesuits, and I really enjoyed kind of the Soviet era things. I think Sputnik's a great looking thing. I love Russian rockets. They've got really interesting organic things about them that are different than other rockets of the era. They're kind of bulbous, which I kind of find fun and fascinating, and kind of Trout Mask replica in a way. And there was a instance where his last name was Karamov. I can't remember his first name. And a cosmonaut went up to space, and on his return from his mission, his capsule started to burn up, and he was actually burning alive in the capsule. And while this was happening, he was bitching out ground control, and I believe there's live audio recording of that you can listen to, of him reading ground control, the riot act, cussing them out and just telling them what failures they are, and
As he should.
as he's burning alive.
I'd be pissed too.
Right? Yes. Voice your grievances, please. And then he crashed to Earth, and his capsule, crashed, and he was burnt to a crisp. And as they do in Russia, they ended up having a open casket funeral and have him on display. And if you look that up, also on the internet,
Really?
you can find a picture with like 3 generals standing behind a charred corpse of this, you can't really tell it's a human, but you can kind of see this like bent hand. It's really like disturbing, but also
the things you learn on this show, I'll tell you.
Anyway, I was just researching, spacesuits, and I came across this really fascinating story that I just was enamored with, and I was like, oh my goodness, what, this is a very stark reminder that we are not meant for, beyond the Earth's atmosphere. Like this is the outer dark telling us no. Like, and so the idea was, the universe spits this guy back down to Earth with a defiant no, you can't be here, but yet his kind of spirit or being whisks off through other dimensions and kind of becomes sentient. And that's why there's like an eye in the hand, kind of the eye of knowledge, that he's seen things he shouldn't see, and so he's had this like ability to go and travel other places, even though his corporeal form has been disregarded. So.
Well, they say you shouldn't judge a book by its cover, but people really do. I mean, it's sort of a filter. They look at the cover and they think, okay, do I want to pick it up now based on the cover? I mean,
right.
It's, and maybe it's a subconscious thing in many cases, but
I absolutely do. I mean,
yeah, I get so many comments from people saying, oh, what a hellacious cover. I got to get this book.
Can I just comment?
Yes.
In the 70s, it was said that if you had a Frank Frazetta cover, your sales would be more than double otherwise.
Mm.
So like when those Conan books came out and they had a Frank Frazetta on them, they sold much better.
And today, if you have a Nick Gucker cover, your sales will double. Yeah, you say, all kidding aside, you laugh, Nick, but you've sold a lot of copies of this book for Jeff and I, and it is appreciated.
Fantastic.
It's hard. It's I'm not going to bitch, but it's hard running a small press, and sales are good.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. That makes me happy.
Sales are a good thing, so it's appreciated.
Of course, happy to be a part of it all. This is why I do it. I mean, as I got into weird fiction and horror, and it was, you always come across these like great large coffee table books that review, and there's always within horror genre, they can't escape the amazing covers and things like that of like Weird Tales and like Fantastic Planets and like, all these different genre publications that came out, and those always got my attention. And I love the idea of what I guess on some aspects for some of the science fiction stuff would be like the retrofuturism. I love the way the future looked back in the 20s and 30s versus like what people are seeing the future as now, just because it had such a much more like less technical aspect, and it was way more kind of freeform. I also loved a lot of the cover artists for the horror publications that came out, and then I started to collect some of them and finding out that there's a lot of great art inside of them, and that's when I started to key in on like Virgil Finlay, Lebron Coy, to name a couple people. And it kind of sparked this idea that like, man, I'd love to be the artist that does this stuff. I want to write with, write images to fiction, to weird fiction, to horror fiction, whatever it is, because that's a lot of ideas I get are always from writing. I mean, sure, I'll watch a movie and I'll think, yeah, that's fantastic, and that just blew my mind. But like, nothing beats what someone's written that you form in your head. Just that I like that collaborative effort of taking in, someone else's drawing, which is virtually, which I'm referring to as words. I mean, they've formed, images through text, and then
right.
I spit it back in my own form of art, and I just love the play back and forth, and kind of I love that there's so many different takes on a single idea. Speaking of Lovecraft and say Cthulhu, like there's a ton of different iterations of, say, Cthulhu or like any of these creatures. And it's just fun to play in the sandbox and say, you know, what can I do that's different? What hasn't been done? What's interesting? What part of biology can I focus on that a lot of people haven't? You know, and again, now talking of biology and science, I'll bring up S.P. Makowski's book, which I did the cover and a few illustrations for, Stag in Flight, yep, Through Dim Shores. And
yeah, that's great.
And that was a really great opportunity to kind of focus on the stag. I mean, I love insects. I actually used to breed stick bugs and I say breed, I mean, they're pets and stuff, but essentially what you're doing is keeping their life cycle going. Had those for a number of years, 3, 4, maybe 5 years. And those are always fascinating and fun to interact with. And I love the idea of mimicry in the world and nature. I find that fascinating, especially as an evolutionary trait, to be able to blend in and survive. And with the opportunity of SP's novella to explore stag beetles, which I'd never really drawn. I've drawn some beetles. I did some drawings of, at one point I was trying to foster the idea that I could create a tank of dermestid beetles so that I could take things that I found, roadkill, whatnot, and then have them stripped, and then I could have the bones. But in the apartment I was in at the time, it just wasn't like a smart thing to do because, you know, dermestids are really bad on, like, say, rugs and clothing, and yeah. And so when these bugs get out of your control, it's probably not a good idea to have them in your own home.
Okay.
So
I'm sorry.
Good call.
I have to jump in with a question.
Yes.
Am I hearing this right? Do you said you had bugs in your apartment and you used to bring in roadkill for them to eat? Is that what I'm?
I was attempting to. I was trying to kind of.
And this was after your stick bug phase.
It was during the stick bug.
How about clarification? I was
it was all
attempting to.
The same. It was all during the same period of time.
Yeah, and I also had a really great.
Right.
I was gifted a millipede. Is a black African millipede. It was about 11 years old. Probably the length of 2 good-sized cigars. And that was one of those things that are they're beautiful to watch. If I'd come home from work and I was like wigged out or stressed or whatever, I would get out. His name was Big Bopper. I'd get Big Bopper and I'd put him on me, and watching him move, his legs were like seeing wind through fields of wheat, and it would just calm you right down. And it was just this really calming thing. And he would crawl around, and it felt amazing. And it was, yeah.
Man, that sounds the opposite of calming.
Well, if it was
it's the first time I've ever heard of monster centipede legs being described.
No, not a centipede, a millipede. A millipede.
Oh.
If someone put a centipede on me, I would freak the F out. Like, but a millipede is they eat detritus. They eat discarded rotten vegetables and things like that. And
that works for you?
Sure.
But the millipede freaks you out.
I mean, their excrement is a little acidic, but not this species.
Right.
Some species actually.
I was just thinking that.
I'm loving this conversation.
Some species squeeze out really acrid staining fluids, and other ones actually will burn your leg. There was a breed of millipede. I was doing research, and there was a breed. I think they referred to the name of Jungavovo, which I think is a fantastic name. And a naturalist had seen this species of millipede he hadn't seen, grabbed it, didn't think to do anything but put it in his pocket at the time, and about an hour later, his leg was burning, and he was like, "What in the world?" And ripped his pants off and forgot he'd had a millipede in there, and it had excreted all this acidic fluid onto his leg, and actually gave him like 3rd-degree burns.
So the lesson is, kids, if you see a giant millipede, do not stick it into your pocket.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
don't put it in your pocket. Whatever you do.
So I had a professor who was a surfer, and he was an invertebrate guy, and he was surfing, and he looked down on the reef, and he saw a species of sea slug that he had never seen before. So he dove down and grabbed it, and he brought it up, but he was way out, right? So he popped it in his mouth,
This story won't end well.
Who the hell?
That's
He
what I-
popped in his mouth?
He popped in his mouth.
That's even worse than putting it in your pocket.
Exactly.
I guess the mouth is like a pocket. I mean, for lack of a
Well,
more
there was
simple
no
term.
warning on the animal, okay?
No,
Not
right.
to do it. So
So you put the slug in his mouth like anybody would. What happened next?
really, really bad idea.
like
Okay?
anybody would.
Don't do. So last night I was walking the dog, and I get to the street light, and there's these two kids with their little puppies, and they're playing with something in the bushes. And I know exactly what they're playing with. They're playing with bufo toads. And if you don't know what bufo toads are, they are better known as cane toads.
Oh, okay.
Stuff that they make voodoo zombie medication out of,
Absolutely.
and they're hallucinogenic, and they will kill you. They excrete this milky white hallucinogen that's poisonous to dogs.
There's a great documentary about them. I don't remember if it's just called Cane Toads. I don't remember, but it was really fascinating. Yeah, really disturbing.
So these kids are like 10 and 8, and they're playing with, and it's like 11 o'clock at night. It's like, get out of there! Go wash your hands. It's like, are you new to Florida? And they're like, yeah, we just moved here from Arizona 2 days ago. And I'm like, welcome to Florida, where everything will try to kill you. It's like Death World here.
It is. It's like a mini Australia.
Yeah, it is.
So wait, what happened to the guy who put the sea slug in his mouth?
Oh yeah,
that's
he
what I
got
wanted.
back and he was
He's
like
like
sick
the mouth
and
guy.
wheezy, and they had to take him to the hospital. And his
No
major
kidding.
professor was like, "Never ever do that again." Like there are they
If you have to be told, I mean,
Right. Again, so for all the kids listening,
don't
two things you don't want to do. You
Yeah.
don't want to put a big giant millipede in your pocket, especially when it's pooping acid.
yeah.
And if you happen to go diving and grabbing sea slugs off the ocean floor, do not put them into your mouth.
Yeah.
Well,
Never.
All right.
you know
This
how
is a public service announcement show. This
yeah,
is
the
great.
more you know.
We're saving lives.
well, you know how sea slugs feed, right?
Our new slogan: "We're
Yeah.
saving lives at Lovecraft eZine."
They're siphon feeders, right?
They vomit up their entire innards.
Yeah.
They expulsiate their internal organs upon what they're going to feed on, and they pull it back into themselves. But it's kind of like this semi-external feeding, and then it becomes internal.
Right.
It's a really bizarre function. When I was in 7th and 8th grade, we had to do like the survival course, and you could either write like a really huge long paper, or you could prepare for like the survival class, and where you go out and you camp. Camp meaning you get dropped off by boats onto islands in groups, and it's kind of like Lord of the Flies. And you have to create shelter. You can only bring what you can survive on in a coffee can, and you can bring clothes in a sleeping bag. And you have to form teams, so you have to strategize on how you bring your survival stuff. And during the course of learning how to, feed off the land, kind of as it were, because it's going to be like coastal beach shores, so we're, eating varieties of seaweed and seeing what actually works and doesn't work. And then there's other items like sea slugs. And so we learned how to dissect a sea slug. And then there's really not much to them as far as edibility. There's 4 strips of meat that look like a rubber band. And if you're smart, you can take your coffee can and turn it upside down and use it as a burner, and hopefully somebody brought either oil or butter, and you can saute some sea slug and have it as a little delicacy, along with maybe some limpets, and that's about it.
I just want to add that if this guy, this scientist had read Brian Lumley's Sea Fiction,
oh right,
never do something like this.
Absolutely.
You read stories like the Cypress Shell and whatever.
Yeah, that's a fantastic story, and it definitely, when you learn about the different feeding and mating habits of deep sea creatures, it's not a long stretch to imagine that the veil between that and pure horror is pretty thin.
When I was in university, we used to go down to the fish market, and we would collect carcasses, heads and bodies for our parasitology class.
Okay.
And there's just I've actually harvested the little tongue amphipods
Oh, you've seen those? You've
Oh,
actually,
yeah.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, that's disgusting.
The ones that eat the tongue and replace the tongue, and they kind of they parasitically feed off the same food that the fish eat.
And then I've actually had crabs that have saculina.
What is saculina?
Philip,
tell us what saculina is.
you're
muted.
You're muted.
Have you not read my new novella, Saculina? Is it Saculina? Is that what it's pronounced? It's all about parasite.
You should look up how to pronounce that.
I thought it was Saculina.
It doesn't matter.
Like Thumbelina.
Yeah.
Right. Well, it's a parasitic barnacle, and it injects itself into crabs, and it uses the crab, it zombifies the crab, takes over as a host, and then it impregnates the crab, and then the crab has the barnacle babies.
Sure.
And I was talking to a fisherman actually who said that when you would catch a lobster or a crab, you wanted to see a lot of barnacles on it because it meant that it was older and aged well, and had better meat in it. But if the saculina is taken over, then it's going to have an egg sac in there. So my story is about what would happen if that were to happen to like a human.
So it's kind of like a bonus. Then you actually get extra food on top of what you were expecting.
Yeah.
Crab with a side of eggs. I mean, that's not a bad deal.
Zombie crabs.
Yeah, zombie crabs.
So it's very similar to like, what is that? The fungus that will then take over certain insects and things too, right?
Yeah.
I mean, kind of the same idea.
Yeah. Aren't there ants who do that?
Yeah, there's a fungi that takes over ants.
Yeah, it takes over ants, right? You just to do their bidding.
I'm asking myself, don't get me wrong, I'm loving it, but I'm asking myself how we got here.
I have to show my cover now. This is Saculina, Nick.
That's okay.
We started with Stag in Flight, and we ended with Saculina.
Now available.
Oh, yes.
Now available. You're online.
So that was a tangent. Let me kind of stray back a little bit then to Stag in Flight, which was a really fantastic and kind of depressing story, but also kind of freeing in the same way. It was like kind of depressing and elating at the same time. The duality you created with that SP was pretty amazing.
My concern was that it would be too depressing. That it would be too depressing to read. The challenge was to somehow make it engaging, because you're talking about this man who really is an outcast, and he really has no connection. He has nothing, and the impulse to despair is very great. So I was really trying everything I could to make it as engaging as possible, and then found out I was working with Nick Gucker. I was just thrilled, because Nick bumped the whole thing up to a whole new level. I mean, these illustrations inside, and is it okay if I show some of the interior illustrations?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Absolutely.
This is I love this so much. Love it so much. I mean, and he really sort of made it, very clear who this guy was and what his nightmare was, what he was struggling with, and just with great compassion, but such a brilliant sense of what the world should be visually.
SP, describe that one that you just showed, because for those who are listening, that is such a great illustration. Nick, I love that.
This one?
Yes.
That one? Okay.
Yes, that
well,
one.
this guy, he has so many fears. He's suffering from mental illness, and he has so many fears. And at night, he has these dreams of all these hands coming out of the dark and pulling at him and tearing at him. And the way that Nick realized this was just gorgeous, really amazing. It's like a skylight.
Hey, Nick.
It's very disturbing.
How would you describe your art?
That's
genius.
Creepy sometimes funny, because I feel like there's like a weird vein of a little bit like playfulness or humor through it, and I think people definitely pick up on that. Like, I've been mentioned like a much darker, like Dr. Seuss sometimes, because some of my line work definitely reflects that, and it makes sense. I mean, I was a huge Dr. Seuss, worshiper. I mean, his stories and his fantastic fiction. It's really crazy stuff. Was super.
There is a bit of dark whimsy, I guess, to your lines.
I think when I loosen up, when I'm doing things that are a little more loose, I think it comes through a lot clearer in that aspect. And it really depends on what media I'm doing as well. Like I like to do a lot of black and white with ink. I also love doing charcoal, like I did with SP Mikowski's, and that was one of those definite like choices I make when I go into a project. Reading the story kind of helps define the medium that I'm going to go into it with. And with her story, it was such a paranoia, spiraling, depression, delusional thing going on, and I really like the moodiness that charcoal can bring. It's not as, inks can be very black and white. They can also purvey a lot of different things, but with my style, I felt charcoal was going to really kind of be more effective in that aspect. And it's also an excuse for me to play with charcoal because it's a lot of fun and it's a huge mess and it's a challenge. So I had a good time with that. With other things, I really enjoy doing painting. So it just really depends on kind of how I'm visualizing it. Usually my first gut instinct is the right one, but oftentimes I'll switch halfway through and be like, no, this is not working, and then try a different medium. So,
Nick, I'm not artistically inclined. I'm more musically inclined, and I've heard, and I know this is true for someone who's musically inclined, you kind of hear the world a little bit differently, I think, than people who are not. I've heard the same thing about those who are artists. Do you think that you see the world in a different way than someone whose talents lie elsewhere?
To some degrees, well, not to quote directly, but I was on a panel at HP Lovecraft Film Festival with Mike Dubish and a number of other artists, and at one point, Mike Dubish was explaining, like, when I look at you, I'm not just seeing, a face and arms. I'm seeing the way light hits you. I'm seeing the shading coming off. I'm seeing the reflective light. I'm seeing, he's like, was verbally analyzing kind of his thought process on how he looks at stuff. And it was, it was funny because I was like, oh yeah, I guess, we kind of, you do that, but it's so second nature. You're not always analytically conscious of doing it all the time.
Right.
And like say, when I do illustrations for stories, like say with SP or with Fracassi, I'm definitely going, when I read the stories, I read it with my art mind on. When I'm just reading for pleasure, it's definitely, I don't have that same approach. And I always have these like surprising moments when I'm not reading for work, where I'm like, oh, these are really great visuals, blah, blah, blah. But when I'm reading for things that I intend to do art for, it's like it's like a cameraman who's trying to find the shots. And while I'm reading, I'm always framing things and trying to find different angles and trying to find what to me might be a more compelling way to show it, or to create the mystery and beg a question, or what can I do to best the story to help it along, to kind of, what's the thing that's going to give it that impact? Because there's definitely art and story, it's like that special beat, like on a comic book, when you turn the page, that's the beat, and you've got a reveal on the next page. And same with film, and same with fiction, when you're cruising through reading, and all of a sudden, boom, there's this image, and it's like, oh, that's way different than I saw it, but at the same time, it's no less compelling, hopefully. So that's the fun of a lot of this for me, is finding placement, finding the right aspect or angle or thing, and it's all fun, and it can be challenging. There's a lot of research I do when I go into this, especially like say with SP's piece. I love bugs, and so it was a really great opportunity to explore stag beetles and then find a ton of stag beetles. And it was like, what kind of stag beetle did you have in mind? Because there's a variety of species. So, there was.
That was a really fun part when you kept sending me pictures of beetles, saying, "Well, is this what you were thinking, or is it more like this?" Those were great. I love the beetles. I love all of those beetles. It was beautiful.
Absolutely. No, it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. And the piece I did in the book where the the stag beetle is on the breast.
Yes. Yes. I forgot to show that one. Oh yeah, that's yes. This part of his fantasy life. Yeah. Yes.
I submitted that original piece for an erotic art festival here in Seattle. It didn't get accepted for some reason, which I was kind of bummed. But
they're crazy.
Absolutely, that was my thought. I was like, they're missing out. There's a niche out there that wants to see that.
One thing.
Sorry. Yeah, definitely. Oh, sorry.
No, it's okay. I was just gonna say one thing also, Nick. Just in describing. One thing that caught me off guard, being lucky enough to have you illustrate one of my stories for Strange Eons, was that you did an interpretation of this. It wasn't an illustration of a scene. It was more of an interpretation that you did of the because it's sort of obscure that there's this godlike being in the woods that this little girl runs into and has a sort of a sordid experience with, and you kind of did a really beautiful interpretation of just kind of creating this, which I can show but nobody can see, but it's basically a little girl standing in front of a cave, but the cave looks like a giant
some people
monster.
See,
yeah. And it says in the last issue of Strange Eons, which SP is also in.
That's incredible.
And, but I thought that was really neat. Like, I wasn't expecting that at all as a writer. I was like, oh man, that's it's a cool, and it's neat to see your interpretation of what that might, not what it might look like, but just kind of get the feel of this cosmic horrible creature, and this girl sort of doing battle with him, and you definitely got all that across in one image. I was very impressed.
There was a lot to work with in your story. There's a lot of great visual aspect, but you also convey a ton of mood and emotion with it, and it's a really delicate subject that you're dealing with a girl kind of coming to of age, and kind of how she takes the understanding of what her mother is telling her about what's in the woods. It's not necessarily Mother Nature, it's probably Father Nature, and Father Nature's kind of rapey and fucked up. And so this whole aspect of it was like, man, this is really intense. And there's a lot of, it's traumatic, and it's the mood that's put forth. You've got this fragile innocence that's kind of getting the innocence, forcefully taken away from her. And just kind of the aspect of that cave was really spoke to me in the story. And there were other aspects of it too. I think there were some branch things that were going on and some stuff like that too. And I thought that visually that might be a little too obvious. So I kind of wanted to convey something that had a mystery and an anticipation kind of within the same moment. So
right. Yeah, I mean, you captured the theme of the story as well as the look of the story, with the girl's defiance in front of this horrible, monster. That she definitely has a defiant stance, and yeah, there's parts of the story with trees eat people and stuff like that would have been an easier sell. But anyway, but yeah, I love that you did that as an artist. I love that you can interpret stuff and create your own sort of sense of the piece. I think that's a really neat skill to have. Was very impressive to me.
Well, thanks. It's a joy to do.
Is that what that story was about? I should probably read that.
It's in your magazine.
What? Oh, my magazine? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't read that, do you?
Hey, Nick, we have people watch live and they can ask questions live, and so shut up, Philip. Jonalith on the YouTube video is asking if you had ever tried your hand at writing anything.
I have, and it's something that I definitely would like to explore some more. I kind of feel like I'm a bit terrible as far as like finding the right way to. I have the terrible thing of like starting from beginning to end, or like trying, like if I get stuck on something I'm writing, I tend to stop and then that's it. So I have a lot of things that I've started or I've gotten partway through, and I've also got a lot of things where I've written like moments or scenes or things like that. And I haven't really taken them much farther than that for the most part. I mean, there's some short things that I've written as a comic kind of thing, but that's different from like my intention of writing something that I intended to write as like a fiction piece. But an example might be a thing I'd been working on. I had been having some dreams about these guys that had these long poles, and they had their heads like as a fishing line was holding their heads, and they could hold their heads above their body. They weren't attached, and they were kind of like scrambling around, and their heads would kind of swing around on these poles. And I was trying to figure out how could I incorporate that into kind of this interesting visual thing. Would it be like in a comic, or would it just be written? So I just started to write out kind of this idea of what it was, and it ended up becoming kind of this nightmare that this brother was having, because this one gentleman was having a nightmare about these things, and it reflected back onto them pursuing someone into some sewers. And it was kind of this analogy of his brother's life, like his brother was dying, and he's a scientist, but it's back in the turn of the century when there's still a lot of metaphysical aspects to science, and so people were still talking more philosophically about science, and they were actually figuring out what the realities of it were. And I really liked that aspect in science, because it's fascinating what people thought and what reality was, and kind of the theories that they had for ways of dealing with maladies and such. And so this scientist was kind of the idea was going to be he was going to come in and talk with other scientists that were working on projects, and so you get an idea of like Leo Wenhoek with his microscopes and kind of what he was attempting to do, and kind of like hit on some different scientists and naturalists and kind of get theories. And this guy was going to form an idea of what he could do to try to save his brother from dying. Kind of at least that was the general outline of what I was kind of get at. And I've only gotten not very far on it, but that was an idea.
Wow. Well, I know that you are on a time crunch, so you've got some projects coming up. What do you want to talk about?
Oh, geez. There's all kinds of stuff going on. I just did a poster that premiered at Necronomicon, the Cats of Ulthar, and that was one that I have to give credit to my wife, Denise, because it was her idea that I did this. Because her and I both love cats, and she was like, do the cats. And I was like, what do I do? Like, how would I approach that one? And she busted out a envelope and scribbled down a person laying dead with a bunch of cats around them. And I was like, oh, okay. So, so to her credit, she gets all the credit. She's like my Rodin. I just execute her ideas apparently. So, I'm her minion. So yeah.
Wait, and Rodin or Rodan?
The big pterodactyl creature in God's
Okay, just so we're clear. Yeah.
You guys talking about Rosanna Dana?
Rosanna Dana. So, and that poster did well at Necronomicon, and it's available on Etsy. And I'm doing like a 10% back to pause as a kind of giving back to people saving animals. So kind of adding a little extra good deed there with the print, because I do love the felines. I've got some book covers I'm working on. There's Test Patterns that's being edited by Michael Adams and Dwayne. How do you say his last name? Dwayne Peasants. I'm gonna say it completely. I don't know. I can't.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about, but I don't know how to pronounce it.
I'm not sure either. But they're doing an anthology that's called Test Patterns, and it's the idea is a science fiction horror, not unlike the Outer Limits, Twilight Zone, Night Gallery. So I'm currently working on a cover for that. Doing a cover for John Wayne Communal through Grindhouse Press that CV Hunt is editing. I am doing this year's poster for the HP Lovecraft Film Festival. I won Pickman's Apprentice last year, and so the winner always gets first dibs if they want to do the poster artwork. And so this year's theme, as far as what was conveyed to me, is going to be New Orleans swamp cult horror. So kind of playing with some of those themes.
Sorry, Nick, that's the poster for the one that's coming up in October?
Yeah, in October, yeah.
Oh, nice. Very cool.
So I've already submitted some sketch ideas. We've had some discussions on how to make it work with text and things like that. So the posters like that are a little more challenging because you've got to allow room for other elements more so than you would other things like book covers where you've got two elements that you kind of have to jostle with. They tend to list a lot of the guests and things like that, which is cool. It's just a little more of a design challenge. What else is going on? Oh yes, thank you.
And this you did. This is an actual painting. Is this oils? Am I right?
Acrylic that I did.
Acrylic. Sorry. Yeah.
Based on a photo that I've had forever of.
Yeah, for those listening, you're talking about the book "A Walk on the Weird Side," the cover.
Yes, thank you. Edited by Joel Pulver. He pulled this together with an amazing list of writers. And it's the idea behind this book is that not only is it an excellent collection of fiction, but weird fiction, but it's to help put some money back in the coffers of Necronomicon because of kind of a big thank you for what they do. He approached me about doing a cover for that or getting some artwork on there. And of course I can never say no to Joe. Joe's been really instrumental in getting me involved with getting art in books. So with fiction. So I'm always happy to follow through with Joe on projects he's got going on. What else is going on?
I know that you are a part of Jason McKittrick's Parcel of Terror, which is something I've been kind of pushing because I love that thing.
Yeah, definitely. He's approached me and I've done some illustrations for some prints that he's done. The last one I did was an illustration of a xenomorph for an alien box that he did. And Jason is a sculptor as well, and he does a lot of really excellent work. And I've approached him about the idea of collaborating on something. We're talking something Halloweenish because obviously he's a huge Halloween head. So I've submitted some design ideas, and yeah, so we're just kind of going back and forth and seeing about something sculptural based on my art, which I'm really excited about. And something I'd like to do more of in the future. I definitely want to collaborate with more artists who do the sculpting and make, figures and or toys. So that would be a dream. So yeah, just kind of getting my feet wet in that realm as well. And so far so good, having fun with that. Trying to think of what else I'm working on. I'm currently also doing some work with a band from the town I grew up in. There's a metal band called Buck Up Little Camper, or Bulk for an acronym, and working on some kind of what would you call it? It's kind of cult imagery, but it's also kind of naturalist based. A lot of like deer horns and pine trees and things like that. So kind of playing with some different aspects of what that entails. Dealing with like a wraparound cover, it's very different dimensions, and again, you have to allow for text and things like that. So having fun with that project. Trying to think of what else. Oh, Strange Eons magazine. Kelly had talked to me about the idea of doing a cover for the upcoming issue. And I believe he'd mentioned something about a Kirby-esque Cthulhuoid type thing. So that's something I've got to start.
He sounds like he's really cool. I'm right here. You can just say you. You don't have to say he when you're talking to me.
It's bad enough that Kelly talks about himself in third person.
I was about to say that same thing, Philip. So I know you got to go in a minute, Nick. Does anyone else have any questions for Nick? Because you got to go in about 5 minutes, don't you?
Yes. Okay.
Anyone else have questions for Nick?
I just wanted to say I really loved the print that I saw Nick at Necronomicon of the thing, and I guess that was part of a series. Is that what you were? Is that what you told me? And those are available on your store, right?
Book called what is it called? It's Printed in Blood. I believe the company that's putting it out. It's a coffee table book honoring John Carpenter's The Thing, and there's a lot of artists that contributed to it. It's a pretty good sized book, and it's a nice. I haven't gotten my my copies of it yet, but they've been doing some at San Diego Comic-Con. They had the book available, and they had asked people who were in the book to be there for signing it. and they're doing that in Chicago right now as well. So it seems like they're hitting up conventions with these books and asking artists to be present to do some signings. So, and that illustration that I did originally also was in Jason McKittrick's Box of Horror, without the title, and it was a smaller print. So this is what I kind of refashioned bigger and added the Thing text to it, and repurposed it for this book project. And I've done some other Thing stuff. I think Philip, you'd asked me if I'd done any other the Thing artwork, and
Right.
I forgot that I did actually do some artwork for Strange Eons via Kelly, and it was Kelly. Do you remember who that author was? He wrote the story of the Thing through the perspective or the eyes of the Thing, the creature.
Peter something. It was called The Things. Yeah, Peter Watts. It was called The Things.
He's Canadian.
And so I did a couple of illustrations for that, and I can certainly send you some images that I'd done for that. One was where they're like in the hallway, and Kurt Russell has got I think he's got like an axe or a gun or something, and they're all kind of standing there kind of facing someone off down a hallway, but from the vision of the Thing, he can see through them because he's analyzing the humans, and he's kind of trying to figure out what's the center of humanity, what's it all mean. He's having this like kind of existential kind of thing that he's going through. The Thing is, and so you can the main characters for the Thing appear transparent. You can see their musculature and their brain, and so it's kind of this. They look as monstrous as we see the Thing. And then I did a drawing of the end sequence where they're sitting there passing the bottle of liquor as things are burning.
Yeah, please send those. I'd love to look at it.
Nick, save me a copy
of
the Thing art book.
Oh.
I'm kind of bummed I was at Comic-Con.
I definitely want a copy of that.
I wish I'd known it was there. I would have picked one up.
No, the book wasn't at Necronomicon.
No, I was at Comic-Con this past Comic-Con.
Oh, you were there? Okay, yeah.
But there was a lot going on. So
there's a lot going on.
Kelly, you have any more questions for Nick? Anybody else? All?
I think that was it.
All right. Well, hey, man. Sorry I didn't get to see you at Necronomicon, but it's great to see you today.
I know, absolutely. I should probably jump on here more often and join y'all.
Yeah, you should. Yeah.
Always a ton of fun. And really great to see everybody. Thanks for all the great questions and interactions. You guys are just fantastic.
Good to see you, Nick.
Yeah, thanks for being here, man.
Thanks, man.
The fires burning up there in Canada, SP.
Well, the air is finally clear where we are. So yeah.
It was like Silent Hill down here in Seattle for a while. I mean,
oh, it was bad here too. It was very bad for a while, but fingers crossed for the people up north. Yeah.
Indeed.
Nick, hopefully I'll see you at the HB Lovecraft Film Festival. I'm hoping to come up.
Absolutely. I think I was talking with Gwen. I think I may be tabling next to some weird magazine called Strange Eons. I don't know.
I can
you don't want to do that.
I'll just keep my one blinder on.
Absolutely.
We have the best booze at our table.
Hopefully there'll be a little separating.
Hey Nick, come up here sometime soon. We got Funko literally a block away from where I live now.
Oh, that's right. They're ever, aren't they? Okay.
Yeah, they just opened up. It's so cool.
And they just came out with a line of Hellboy figures, didn't they?
Yeah, it's all there, and it's like a little Disneyland in there. The store is so amazing.
Funko is a bit of a bane of the con, because I was tabling at Emerald City with my buddies, and next to us was a Funko. It wasn't like an official Funko. They just had a lot of Funko stuff at their booth, and these people would just stand in front of your booth, shopping at the other booth, and the Funko people are just kind of obnoxious, but it's hot. It's what's hot, right?
We'll plaster your artwork all over their windows.
Nick, take care, and thank you for all the William Hope Hodgson artwork that you've done.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you for your patronage, my friend. It was great to see you at Economicon. And
I'm showing the hod.
Yes.
From the classic.
So a quick little piece of info on that illustration I did. That's actually not too far from something that exists in this world. image-wise. When doing research for pigs and hogs and such, I want to say it's in Taiwan. They have like this pig festival, this like hog festival, and they do some really bizarre things where they they grow giant pigs, and then when they slaughter them, they stretch their hides and they look like freaking flesh balloons, and then they decorate them, and then they parade them around, and it's the most surreal looking thing. And I'm telling you, the hog illustration I drew is not too far from like what they're putting on display. Like, it was an amazing, weird find. So I'll see if I can find some links or some images for it.
Yeah, Duke, I don't want to Google pig balloons. I'm afraid of what might come back.
Like you haven't already.
I'm afraid of what might come back at me.
Inflatable swine things.
Nick, did you get to the party on Thursday night? Party?
Yeah, I did.
So the goat?
No, what party? Which party?
The parking lot party.
I did, yes, with Big Nazo.
Yes, the goat, right?
Absolutely.
The goat was so surreal.
It was, and I was hanging out with the artist Matthew Jaffe, who's vegan, and he was pretty put off. He was pretty put off by. I didn't think it was real, and apparently it was. And they were serving what, goat right off of that thing, or
goat curry.
Yeah. So I didn't realize that was the whole thing. My wife Denise was cold, and she's like, "Let's go stand by the fire." I was like, "Absolutely." And we were standing in the firelight, and then I was like, "Oh, that's pretty intense." And then Matthew's like, "Yeah, that's kind of gross." I was like, "Gross? Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah." But it smelled delicious. I did not taste it, but it looked pretty.
It was very good. I enjoyed it.
I missed the goat. I missed the goat roast. I did see the ice cream truck though.
Ah, yes.
All right, Nick, you got to get going, right, buddy?
I do. I've got to go have dinner with mom-in-law. So.
Yeah. Well, thanks for being here, Nick.
Hey, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. It's a ton of fun, and thanks for all of your support. And I look forward to seeing y'all in the future, and hopefully working again with some of you.
All right, buddy. Thanks for being on. Talk to you soon.
You bet. Night.
See you, Nick.
See ya.
All right.
It's pretty obvious we could talk to Nick for about 4 hours.
Yeah, that's very true. All right, so let me go over quickly a few things that I got at the Necronomicon before we go, and this is pretty cool. I'll describe it for those who are listening later, which I know is most of you. This is the H.P. Lovecraft, The Complete Fiction, and audio book by the H.P. Lovecraft Historical Society, and it looks like a book. It's made out of cardboard. Really looks nice though. And you open it up, and on one side you've got a thumb drive with the profile of H.P. Lovecraft on it, and very nicely set into this. And then on the other side you got something really, really cool, which is a library card of people who have checked out this book, and it's got signatures by Clark Ashton Smith, Frank Belknap Long, August Derleth, all kinds of people. It's really, really neat.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's very classy, and they truly have every single Lovecraft story done very well by these guys, read by the H.P. Lovecraft Historical Society guys, John Braney and Andrew Lehman. So I don't know if any of you guys picked up a copy, but if anyone listening to this is into H.P. Lovecraft, which you probably are, you might want to go to the H.P. Lovecraft Historical Society's website and pick it up. So what'd you guys pick up that was cooler? Anybody got anything they want to remark on?
I picked up a couple out-of-print Dogan and Bremer books.
Yeah.
But I can't remember the titles off the top of my head. But that was a very cool table, and Medenis, I think his name is, and yeah, that was very neat. But it was neat to pick up some of the stuff that you couldn't, wasn't available anywhere else, especially from a guy like me who collects that kind of stuff. So
yeah. Hippocampus, Derek Hussey gave me, this is a 3-volume set, I'm only holding up one, of The Complete Fiction of H.P. Lovecraft, in text, obviously. And it's really neat. I think we all have H.P. Lovecraft stories already, but these are all together and they're in chronological order. So it's kind of nice to have. And that's available at the Hippocampus website. I think most importantly, and we've already talked about it a little bit. Yeah.
But Mike, there's actually a 4th volume out now, which includes the revisions.
Oh, well, there's only so many revisions you need of
the revision stories, like the Curse of Yig and the map.
Oh. Okay, I gotcha. All right, good to know. All right. A Walk on the Wild Side, edited by Joseph S. Pulver, Sr. And
Weird.
Joe
Weird
is
side.
Walk on the Weird Side. Yes, I'm sorry. Joe, for those who have asked, is doing a little bit better each day. You know, he's going to be in the hospital a while. I don't know how long, but I did talk to him, had a video chat with him 2 days ago, and he was in great spirits, doing a lot better than he was a few days ago. So there's a lot of authors in this book. I'm not even going to bother to list them because there's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Well, Frikazi and I are in there.
Like 40?
And SB. Three of the people on your screen are in that book.
Yeah.
Weehunt's in there. Christy DeMeester's in there. Robert Levy's in there.
I think it's kind of it's a tribute to Joe's influence. It's a tribute to the way we all feel about Joe, that all of these people just said, sure, absolutely. You want a story? You got it. I mean, everybody wanted to help Necronomicon Providence as well, you know, to add a little bit to, you know, boost in any way possible. But it was very much about people responding immediately to Joe. So, yeah, I just like throw that in there.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. It was funny because it was one of those moments where I think I'd literally just had a conversation with somebody where we were talking about being, you know, leaning towards staying away from the anthologies that are more like that are non-pay, put it that way, and or very small pay, and trying to stick with stuff that's paying. And then I think it was just a couple days later, Joe asked me to contribute a story to this, and he said, and I was like, oh, well, first of all, I was like, well, what's it for? And he said, well, it's to support Necronomicon. And I said, well, I don't really have the time. I'm kind of trying not to write stories that aren't paying, but I absolutely would never say no to you as an editor. So, and it sounds like a great cause. So I'm totally in.
And I have to say that, you know, quite a lot of the paying gigs that I've gotten over the last couple of years are because Joe recommended me to somebody or mentioned my name to an editor and said, hey, you know, take a look at her work, give her a chance. So, you know, if Joe asks me for something like that, I'm happy to give him a story. Absolutely. He's done so much for me and so much for most of the writers I know. You know, he's given people, sometimes he gives you a boost and you don't even know it. You don't even know that behind the scenes he recommended you to somebody, and that's why, you know, you get another offer of an anthology or an invitation. So yes, Joe, yes.
Well, I can't link to everything, but I will try to remember to link to this when I put the podcast up. But again, if you Google A Walk on the Weird Side, Joseph S. Pulver, I'm sure you'll probably come to it, would be my guess. So, you know, you're going to support Joe Pulver and you're going to support Necronomicon, which is another topic. Necronomicon definitely deserves to be supported. Niels did such a fantastic job. Yeah. I saw nothing negative there. I saw hundreds of people who were having a hell of a great time. Great panels. You know, just a lot of great stuff going on. Yeah. So much stuff that was hard to choose, you know?
The only thing I would say is that I want more food at that party on Thursday night. And I think we could just call it the Necronomicon. And
that's bad.
It's insane.
But, yeah, it would have been good to have food because, like, for a lot of people, I think like us, and this isn't a I mean, whatever. It was a great parking lot party, but you know, we just flown in and we kind of went straight straight there. And but that was a really fun way to kick things off. I was going to mention, Mike, the Walk on the Weird Side book is available through the Lovecraft Arts and Sciences, their website. They're selling it.
Okay.
Neil's store.
All right, that's good to know.
So, I flew in on Wednesday, and we got there to the airport in Providence around 11, and got to Cranston at midnight, and we had not eaten anything for 6 hours. So we went on this quest, this Kumarian quest. Harold and Kumar were nothing compared to us for food at midnight in Providence. And we ended up at Olneyville, the place that makes hot dogs, and it's like we walked into a Quentin Tarantino film. Just bizarre, and you get to be buzzed into the place, and we're sitting there going, and we're there alone, and then there's a girl, and they won't let the girl leave because she's cute, and then cops show up, and then a bachelor party shows up, and this guy with a full broken arm, he's yelling at his mom. I'm just like, if a midget walks in, we're all gonna die. It's just it's just a bad scene. We got to get out of here.
How was the food though? That's the important
food, for three, I think we got for like $5, we got 3 hot dogs. It was really quite good.
We went to a late night place called Murphy's. That was pretty good. If you're in Providence and it's midnight and you're looking for fish and chips or a hamburger, go to Murphy's.
Yeah, Murphy's was good. There was another place that was not so good, but yes, Murphy's was good.
What did you guys think of? I think most of you were on panels, weren't you? What did you guys think of the panels you were on, and panels that you were in the audience for?
Well, I was not on any panels, but I went to a couple. The highlight for me was the editors panel, which is Peter Straub and Michael Kelly and Mike Davis and Doug Winter and Ellen Datlow, and everyone just talking about editing anthologies and hearing Straub's take on it and Ellen Datlow's take on it. That was pretty cool. I thought that was a really fascinating discussion, and it was neat to hear a lot of the perspectives from the editor's point of view about how they go about getting the stories, selecting the stories, putting them in the order they put them in, and somebody, when you got heavy hitters like that talking about it, you really listen, and that was a great panel for me, kind of the highlight.
And Mike Kelly did a great job moderating that panel.
Yeah,
I think I filled in or was on like 4 or 5 panels, and I really enjoyed myself. And I was surprised that most of the panels were chock full of audience. I don't think for some of them there were not even in the auditorium or the ballroom. Some of these places were completely full. So yeah, I was really happy.
That's good. Sam Gafford gave me this. H.P. Lovecraft, some notes on a non-entity. It's a graphic novel biography of H.P. Lovecraft. For those who are watching, here's the cover. I have not had a chance to read through this yet, but yeah, it looks pretty interesting.
Yeah.
So
the only thing that drove me nuts while I was there was the number of author guests that were there that I had no clue were going to be there.
Like Paul Wilson.
Like F. Paul Wilson, like Tom Montaglione, Ruth Emrys was there.
Yeah, I met Paul and Tom in the lobby.
Yeah.
I had a great chat with him. And Paul had emailed the con telling him he was coming and if they wanted to put him on panels. He got no response.
Yeah.
Oh, that's weird.
Yeah, well, but sometimes it's very busy.
Well, I think it gets lost unless you specifically say, I want to be on the King in Yellow panel.
Right.
Or I want to be on the Robert E. Howard panel.
Well, he was in the audience on the editing panel, and afterwards I went up to him and said, I don't know if you remember, you were on my show, and He said, yeah, of course I remember. And I said, well, I just want to thank you again for Repairman Jack because I love that series so much. So he said, yeah, I can't not write it.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I got to meet him in the bar, the Biltmore bar. I got to.
Yeah.
He was there. There was a power table where it was like Datlow and Straub and Stephen Graham Jones and we were I was at an adjacent table, far enough away from the power table not to be affiliated. And I made a point to go over and say, I'm a big fan, man. Your books are great. He was very, very nice. And Peter Straub also could not have been nicer and more generous with his time for somebody just coming up and saying hi. And
yeah,
so it was everybody there was great.
Isn't Repairman Jack great? I just love that series.
It's a really fun, well-written series. Yeah.
He's actually starting a new series. If you read it was a crossover book. I can't remember what the title was, but the one where Repairman Jack teamed up with another character.
It had to be one of the last ones in the Repairman Jack series, and it was also like the last one in the Glaken and
he crossed over with a character created by Heather Graham.
Oh, I don't remember that.
It was a series, an anthology where they had Repairman Jack teamed up with one of Heather Graham's detectives, and they also had a Jack Reacher team up with somebody else too.
Oh yeah, I know what book you're talking about. I can't remember the title though. Anthology.
Well, the villain in the Repairman Jack story that Paul wrote with Heather Graham was an obscure villainess from Saxe Romer called Madame de Medici. And he's doing more with her. He just, since I'm something of a Romer expert, he just gave me a story to vet for him. In which
is it Infernal Night? The book that you were talking about? Yeah.
That sounds right. Okay. He's now going to have Madame de Medici meet Sherlock Holmes. So he's starting to connect her to his own adversary cycle stuff.
We should have him on the show again, see if he'd be willing to come back on the show.
Yeah, he'll be the guest of honor at the Lovecraft Film Festival this year.
Well,
no kidding.
Since I'm in communication with him, do you want me to ask him?
Sure. Make sure you look at. I need to make sure you look at the podcast page with the schedule though, because I'm booked up through March and April. So.
All right. So maybe I should ask him around March if he would be available for.
Well, no, we can ask him now. I'm just saying I can't ask.
Well, I mean, it's way
book him right away.
I was saying it's way in advance.
Yeah.
Well, I'll look at,
all right.
I'll work it out with you.
All right. After I told him I like Repairman Jack so much, he told me I had a very distinctive voice. So I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Maybe it's a good thing if you're doing a podcast.
Better than a distinctive appearance.
Is that what he told you?
You look really unique.
Hey, Mike, you have a face for radio.
Yeah, I've heard that one before.
The only thing I was going to say about it is combining the Necronomicon Providence and the upcoming HP Lovecraft Film Festival as being a guest of honor. I think Philip Gillot is also listed as one of the featured guests for the upcoming film festival, and he who wrote and directed They Remain, which was this feature film based on Laird Barron's story 30. And worth noting that Philip was running the film side of Necronomicon Providence and was basically on call 24/7. Richard Stanley was the guest of honor, and they're showing a lot of his films and documentaries.
Yeah, he was basically the movie minion.
He was, yeah. We'd be at a bar, and he'd be like, "Oh shit, I gotta go turn on the 10 o'clock movie," and then he'd literally go running down the street.
I had a great time talking to Philip several times. He's such a nice guy. He supports the show too. He's Patreon, so appreciate that.
He is a nice, he is a great guy. Yeah, very nice person.
Yeah, he is. I'm looking forward to watching They Remain. All right, we got anything else to talk about? I think we covered it pretty well.
Yeah,
Necronomicon was awesome.
One last thing about Nick, you guys, he is the real deal. His house is a cool old Victorian style place, and it's decorated that way as well. And so the paintings on the wall, they hang on very long lines that go all the way up to the wainscoting at the top, you know, in the Victorian style. And he has a cabinet of curiosities there with various. He's got a human spine on display and a couple of other things. And then what we were seeing in the background there was kind of his artist studio, which is probably the most modern looking room in the place. But he's just, I just love that guy. I don't know if that came across in the interview, but
you know, and I've said this 20 times on this show. People are probably getting tired of me saying it, but he's one of those guys that I admire because he's not only extremely talented, but he's an extremely nice, kind guy. You know, he's just a good guy.
Mm-hmm. And completely, completely unpretentious.
Yeah.
Very friendly, approachable, easy to hang out with. I got a chance to hang out with him quite a bit at the H.P. Lovecraft Film Festival in San Pedro, and just great. Wonderful, warm, welcoming, great guy.
Well, there are a lot of talented people in the world, and there are a lot of talented people who are just not that way. They're not nice at all. And Nick, you know, I really admire people who have the talent and are kind as well. So he's one of those people.
He is. He really is.
Oops, sorry.
Sorry?
Did anybody else get to see the show, the live action dramatization of the Call of Cthulhu with the James Harrison opening magic act?
I saw James open. I didn't see the rest of it.
Both of those were really good, and I want to, you know, first of all, thank Necronomicon for, you know, doing that. You don't get enough live performances at conventions, and two, that's a huge risk on both their parts, both James Harrison and the guy who did the Call of Cthulhu, just to walk into there and, you know, do it cold without any rehearsals in the space. Man,
yeah.
That was really risky, and they pulled it off. It was really good.
Did you
James did great.
Were you in the second showing where they had the problem that Kim Harrison had was that they couldn't turn the lights off when Mike and I saw it?
Yeah, the second one was better, you know, because they figured that out.
Good.
So, but yeah, they did a really good job. I was really impressed with what they had come up with as a Lovecraftian magic act. That was really cool. And then the dramatization of the Call of Cthulhu really just nailed it.
We were going to talk about the King in Yellow panel. Just to say, we sorely missed Joe.
Mm-hmm.
We praised his contributions to reviving Chambers. It was only two other people besides me, so I think more people dropped out for whatever reasons. It just had Alex Houston and Ruthena Emrys, who wrote Wintertide. But it was a very well-received panel.
Good.
And we're hoping that the third season of True Detective will be good for once.
Be good for once. Well,
like first.
Matt, what's the prize you're giving away again? You're muted.
Somebody wake up, Matt.
Yeah. You're muted. Okay, we'll pretend there's a prize.
Somebody tell a joke.
I know it was Centipede Press.
Yeah,
it's Brood of the Witch Queen.
It was
Right.
Collection of stories by Sax Roma, Centipede Press.
On some other strange page. It's this Brood of the Witch Queen by Sax Romer.
Okay. Well, if you would like that, if you'd like to be put into the random drawing for that, and I'm so proud of myself that I actually remembered this time. Email Lovecraft eZine prizes at gmail.com and put Brood of the Witch Queen in the subject of the email. And whatever
put my name in for that. That's a cool looking book.
Yeah, you do that. Lovecraft eZine prizes at gmail.com. So, and I'll pick somebody about a week from now or so. I use random.org to pick someone. So, all right. Well, thanks everybody. Thanks for listening, and we will see everybody next week.